Welcome to the MMKP season 2020, where I believe God is going to do something really amazing, something that we actually are not expecting. And I want to tell you about three things that I think are going to continue to make a big difference. I got to quit saying continue. Let's take it again. Number 5. Hi, and thank you for being part of MMKP 2020. Meet my Kapitbahay Party. This is a new style of sharing the gospel. This is not a new style of sharing the gospel. Number 6. Hi, and thank you again for being part of Mega Monday Madness 2020 and the upcoming MMKP 2020 season. This is an exciting time for our church as God gives us the opportunity to share the gospel with our Kapitbahay. What a great chance. Now, there are some dynamics that will happen. The impact of us sharing the gospel with our friends and ultimately our neighbors. Let's just think about this. What would happen to your neighbor if they became a believer? What would happen to your street if many people on your street became believers? What would happen to your bayan, yung barangay mo? What would happen to your city if more and more people became believers? What would happen to the NCR and then or the greater area or your region? Or what would happen to all of the Philippines or all of the world as we share the gospel one at a time? There's 3 things I want to tell you about that I think will be fulfilled during this MMKP season. The first is that the gospel will be multiplied. The second is that leaders will be amplified. And ultimately, number 3, God will be glorified. Multiplied, amplified, and glorified. Let me walk you through these things. When the gospel is shared through our neighborhood, one neighbor at a time, it'll make a big difference in our neighborhood. Everything will change. I mean, imagine if so many of your neighbors became believers. 1, alcohol abuse would drop. Drug abuse would drop. You would see families restored. You would see broken relationships forgiven and coming back together. You would see husbands and wives loving each other more. Fathers and daughters and moms and sons coming and restoring their relationships again because of the power of the gospel. And you will have a big part in that as the gospel is multiplied through MMKP. What would happen in your barangay if yung mga kagawad or the councilmen of your barangay became believers? What would the impact be if the vice chair or the vice chairman or the vice captain or the barangay captain became a believer in your barangay? What impact would that be? Now look at the city. Imagine the city having people involved in office, or even teachers in your high school, your elementary school, even the colleges that we attend, if we saw more and more believers in the faculty and in the leadership of our government. That would make a drastic difference in the way that we live. And not only that, is that the gospel would continue to be multiplied in so many new and powerful ways. Sharing the gospel and the gospel being multiplied makes a difference in such an amazing way, in ways that I haven't even imagined what the gospel can do and the way that God is going to move through this. Now, I'm going to show you this picture of our pipeline. This is our ministry pipeline. This is part of the gospel. At the very beginning, you can see here that we, and through the MMKP season, is part of the first step of evangelism in sharing the gospel, in reaching the lost world, with the ultimate goal of reaching them with the gospel, renewing them through spiritual growth, which is C groups, discipleship, baptism, ultimately raising them up into leadership where they soon volunteer, and then ultimately releasing them into powerful ministry. And that might mean locally, that might mean in a powerful volunteer format, that might mean being part of an overseas missionary or cross-cultural missionary as you serve in a different culture. But ultimately, what we see is we want to see God's purpose fulfilled. I had a pastor say this, and I love this statement. You know, it's really not our job to convert people. It's our job to start the conversation. It's God's job to convert. We need to start the conversation, allow the Holy Spirit to work in their heart, and open their heart up for Jesus to come in and to change their life permanently and forever. Now, what you're going to realize is that as we see people come to know Jesus Christ, you are so good at follow-up already that we're going to see so many people, thousands, not hundreds, thousands of people followed up, thousands of people baptized as we continue to reopen and relaunch all of our churches. And the churches are going to grow. We're going to see groups multiplied, not just new groups started. Your C group is going to multiply because of the number of people that came to know the Lord during your MMKP party, during your Meet My Kapitbahay Party. And this is just going to continue to multiply and multiply out in such powerful ways. Now, you're going to come across people who are going to have excuses. The excuse is going to be now, especially during the whole pandemic and everything, coronavirus, and everybody's going to say, ay, wala akong time, ay, busy po ako, ay, hindi ko pa alam yung schedule ko for work. And you're going to say, okay, but let me challenge you. Make a way. Don't accept excuses. Excuses allow us and give us the ability to prematurely accept defeat. Don't accept defeat. In fact, Paul says in Romans chapter 8, he says we are more than conquerors. Earlier in a few verses before that, he says, what can stop us? What God is on our side, who can be against us? I mean, what a powerful way to look at this MMKP season as the gospel is multiplied. Second part, amplified. Leadership being amplified. Now is the time, C group leaders, now is the time to identify the potential C group leader that you have in your group and amplify their leadership to the next level. Help them go to the next level. Let this be, use this video, even share this with them saying, wow, you really need to watch this because this is going to encourage you. It's time for you, panahon na, for you to now start leading your own C group. We need to multiply. The gospel has multiplied. It's time for you and your leadership to be amplified. What an amazing time to become a C group leader. What an amazing time to train the next C group leader. You know, we have express 15-minute training already prepared for you. You can download it. You can watch it in 15 minutes. You can do it from your mobile phone, from your tablet, from your PC. You can do it on your way to work. You can do it at home. It doesn't take a whole big Wi-Fi download. You can do this all with a very small MB coming from your mobile data. And what an opportunity to amplify your leadership. As we amplify our leadership, we are going to continue to move forward in our 1K leader army. Be part. Join us. Be part of the 1,000 C group leaders. By January 1, 2021, we will have 1,000 C group leaders. Number 3, glorified. Ultimately, we want to see God glorified. In everything that we do it for the glory of the kingdom. The gospel multiplied, leaders amplified, and ultimately God glorified. When you share the gospel, you glorify God. When you start discipleship, you glorify God. When you multiply your group and you lead your group, you glorify God. And ultimately, we want to do everything we can to glorify God. This means sharing the gospel. This means starting discipleship. This means meeting regularly with your C group and being part of your church. This is the time to watch and see God glorified through this. Imagine what would happen when the whole nation hears the gospel. What would happen when every city hears the gospel? What would happen when every barangay hears the gospel? And what happens when every neighbor on your street hears the gospel? God will be glorified through this. I challenge you, join us. Join us in prayer for these 3 things. 1, that God will open the heart of these unbelievers that we will be sharing the gospel with. Number 2, God will open their schedule. And number 3, that God will open your mouth as you share the gospel and give you the courage, the strength to reach out and say, I have something great I have to share with you, and share the gospel with them. We will see God glorified, leaders amplified, and ultimately the gospel multiplied.